Thanks all for coming. I'll do a brief statement and then we'll hand over to Jaden. So I can confirm that Jaden has placed 3 multi-bets worth a total of $36 on Collingwood matches that we've been participating in, and those matches have been through a betting account of a friend. Reflecting on his mistake, Jaden came forward to the club and immediately understanding the seriousness of the matter, we escalated the issue to the AFL, who then undertook an investigation. And I want to stress that Jaden came forward with the information voluntarily and that we were proactive immediately about raising the issue to the AFL. As a club here at Collingwood, we understand the absolute importance of the integrity of our sport. It's paramount, and we understand our responsibility to ensure that our integrity and the competition's integrity is at the foremost of all of our activities and behaviours. The penalty that's been handed down to Jaden, we believe, is a tough penalty, but we, including Jaden, think it is a fair one given the circumstances of the matter. We also recognise that Jaden is a young man that's made a mistake. What we're pleased about in a very tough situation for Jaden and the club is that he's a young man who has owned up to his mistakes. He's come forward without any prompting, and he understood in doing so that action would have severe consequences. Good people do make mistakes, but the sign of the good person is how they respond. Very importantly, we'll continue to support Jaden through the suspension and beyond. We know he'll learn a lot from his experiences and what he's experienced going through this mistake that he's made, and we will absolutely stand by him right throughout. Importantly, Jaden also wanted to speak directly and personally about the matter and the issue. He'll also take a few questions and then he'll leave, and then Geoff and I will take any further questions. So I'll hand over to you, Jaden. Thanks.
Firstly, thanks for coming today. As Mark alluded to earlier this year, I placed 3 bets on AFL games involving my football team. The bets I placed were through a mate's account and were dependent on Collingwood and Collingwood players performing at their best. The bets totaled $36 and I did not win any money from them. I'm fully aware that as an AFL footballer, I'm not allowed to bet on AFL matches, but I justified my behaviour It was an incredibly stupid thing to do, and I now realise the seriousness of what I've done. I've been sanctioned by the AFL and will be suspended from playing at AFL level for 22 weeks, with 12 of those suspended and paid a $20,000 fine. I'm very embarrassed that I've let myself, my family, my teammates and our loyal fans down, and I'm devastated they won't be able to pull on a Collingwood jumper for the next 10 weeks. I obviously cannot change what I've done in the past, but what's most important is what I do next. I'm committed to spending my time on the sidelines reflecting on how I can make better decisions in the future. I want to issue an unreserved apology to those who I've let down, and I hope that in time I can earn back any trust that I've lost. Thank you.
Jaden, it's such a small amount of money. Why?
Yeah, well, I suppose sitting on the couch with my mate, and he was doing the same thing, and at the time, I obviously didn't think about the bigger picture and the long-term consequences. I suppose impacting on the integrity of the game, I now realise is just not acceptable, and I hope others can learn from my mistakes.
What prompted you to come forward to Geoff Walsh and explain why you've done this and what made you do that?
I suppose it's just how I've always been as a person. Mum and Dad have always been big on make sure you tell the truth, and anything that you're hiding will only hurt you in the long run. So I suppose as I said, it was 3 bets, and after the third one I was like, this is actually accumulating to something that could be a lot bigger, and I just got a really guilty conscience, and I mean, I went and spoke to Walshy to sort out his advice. I was like, look, I have made a mistake here. I'm really guilty, and I regret it. So what can we do from here? And he said we'll take it to the AFL, and I was happy with that.
Jaden, why didn't you self-report earlier?
Like I said, I think the first 2 times I sort of was just a little bit oblivious to it. I thought, obviously in the moment I was a little bit ignorant and thought it might just be harmless sort of thing, but after the 3rd time, like I said, it was just weighing on me, like it was starting to build up, and I mean, if I hadn't reported, like, I don't know, so I was just feeling way too guilty.
Did you think the penalty would be this big when you self-reported?
Honestly, I had no idea, obviously. I hadn't really thought a whole lot about it. It was more just making sure I got it off my chest. I mean, the fact that I just got it off my chest, I felt a lot more comfortable with myself, and I think I'm able to look at myself in the mirror better than if I had been still holding on to this today. So when I reported, I didn't really think about the consequences at all.
Jaden, you could have been very in the background. You think that perhaps Benny might have got a bit of a handle on you that you didn't anticipate, or you might have an issue you might sit down and help with? Is there a reporter issue in gambling?
No, not at all. I just at the time I made 3 silly mistakes with one of my mates, and I certainly regret doing that, and it's almost scared me off gambling altogether, to be honest with you.
What are your gambling habits? I mean, do you gamble much on other sports? How often do you have a bet on?
No, I don't bet on other sports at all. I in the spring carnival, I like to have a little bet on the races at Melbourne, but that's about as far as it goes.
And have you ever betted on other AFL matches?
No, I have not.
Did these bets affect your performance or the way you played it all?
No, not at all. I didn't think about them while I was out there. Obviously, after I'd finished and we'd had our meeting with Bucks, I'd have a look at my phone and go, whoever it was didn't hit what it was, I suppose.
What's your
Thank-
breakdown, Jade? You're going to miss 10
Last
weeks.
question, thanks.
There's no guarantee you get picked for an upcoming final series. Is it sort of sunk in the enormity of penalties?
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, 10 weeks is a long time, and it brings me back. I can come back and play the first week of finals, but obviously I hope the team's going well there, and it'll be a tough spot to get back. So in the end, it could end up being a 14-week penalty. But I know in the 10 weeks that I won't be playing, I'll be working that hard on the track and doing everything I can to prepare myself for that opportunity in the week 1 or week 2, or whenever it may be in finals, that I get the opportunity to play again.
We've got the last month of training with Jaden. Knowing
Thank you.
That was the last question.
Thanks for that.
Sorry,
So,
that was the last question.
Geoff and I are happy to take any other questions.
Yes, yeah. Look, under AFL rules, you only get paid unless if you're injured. Of course, you get injury payments. But no, he will forego his match payment for each match he's suspended.
Yeah, what's your emotion? I mean, you've been through this before at this time. What did you think of Jaden first came?
Yeah, well, obviously, the emotion first of all is disappointment for Jaden, disappointment for the consequences that you know lay ahead for him and the footy club, and I think there's frustration because, you know, as has been alluded to and said in both AFL and our own statements, that the rules are clear. The education around matters like gambling these days is both clear and abundant. So there's no excuse for either not knowing or ignorance. So there's all those sorts of emotions, Julian, that go through your head immediately when Jaden breaks that news to you.
Has Jaden faced his playing group yet about this?
He hasn't directly addressed the playing group on this matter, but he's been part of the playing group in a couple of meetings in the last 24 hours that this matter has been discussed openly amongst the group.
Geoff, how important is Jaden's welfare right now, bearing in mind this is quite new for probably a fair portion of the club as well?
Yeah, and I think off the top of my head, I think I'm right that it's the heaviest suspension for a player in the gambling arena. So that impacts obviously enormously, particularly on a young 20-year-old man. So it's important that we do keep an eye on him as a young man in terms of his welfare and his well-being. His regret and his remorse appropriately has been enormous. So we just don't want that to manifest itself into something that he closes up and withdraws. And I think the support systems that we have in our welfare and our footy club in general will ensure that he's well looked after.
Geoff, when you self-reported, did you think the penalty would be this deep?
Well, again, as I said before, Rob, I think this is a precedent in terms of the heaviness of the penalty, and it is a heavy penalty. So, in all honesty, did I think right at that moment that this is going to be the heaviest penalty that the game's seen? No, I didn't. But did I also think that this is a serious breach and that there is a clear understanding after talking to Jaden that he understood that it was a breach, and certainly I did understand it was a breach. So I knew that this wasn't going to be a matter that was treated lightly. But honestly, at the time, as I said, did I think this is going to be the heaviest penalty we've ever seen? No, I didn't.
Geoff, in your experience, you talked about the education information around gambling being funded. Has the scourge of gambling, do you think, become a bigger issue now with you than it was, say, 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Sam, it's hard to speak for other you're not inside the club, you don't know. It's never as good, it's never as bad. But I think from our point of view, we have a number of professionals within our footy department that do service really well on a multitude of issues, which would include gambling. So I don't, and it certainly hasn't been brought to the surface here that it's a problem in our football club. So that's all I can rely on is our own personal experience.
I think in a way, I'll add further, I think in a way, the way this situation's played out, it does reinforce the education has been good within the club and across the industry. Obviously, Jaden knew that he'd done the wrong thing, and that does speak to the quality of the education, the fact that he was aware of the rules and he knew that he'd done the wrong thing.
We're often talked about the education, but the AFL and the clubs have relationships, and the fans are bombarded with messages from betting agencies encouraging them to bet. Are we giving people mixed messages? When there's a gambling dollars are being pitched at the fans in particular?
Yeah, look, I think there are two different issues. One is sort of fan and betting within the game, and what we're here talking about is clearly we all know the rules and Jaden knows the rules, and so he knew when he was betting on a Collingwood match in particular, but any AFL match, that he was doing the wrong thing. And I think that's what we're addressing, the fact that he did the wrong thing. Importantly, from a club and from his perspective, he fronted into that and fronted into it immediately, and I think that's what we're here about, to talk about that.
I think Jaden made it pretty clear that the first couple of times he did it and it didn't dawn on him that he was doing the wrong thing. It was really after the third time that he realised, okay, I've done something wrong. Why would we have that delay, given everything we're speaking now about the education and gambling? Why would it take a few goes at it from the thing actually doing the wrong thing?
Yeah, I can't speak on Jaden's behalf in terms of that, but he knew he was doing the wrong thing when he was betting on Collingwood matches in particular. So there was no doubt about that, and by his own admission, he knew he was not doing the right thing. So, and it was about coming forward and fronting into it was a very good response in a bad situation.
Geoff, I'm mindful you might want to reiterate Mark's answer on this, but do you think there's a potential tension between the susceptibility of these young players to gambling and the promotion of gambling that they have themselves today?
Tom, I don't really have anything to add than what Mark said. I endorse what Mark said, and anything else would be useless commentary.
Geoff, you were the first person he told. Did you tell a teammate about bets, or he was?
Well, he was advised to come to me, and I think in detail, I'm pretty confident that, or I am confident that I was the first person that he told the exact circumstances in detail, and came, as I said before, with a heavy heart and full of remorse to say, what do I do? What do we do?
What do you mean when he was advised to come to you?
Just that, Rob, he was
By a
advised.
teammate?
He was advised to come with me.
You're surprised, you've been in footy for so long, you're with so many young people, with all the education, etc., that you just talked about. Are you still surprised that a young bloke can make a mistake like that, bet on his own game?
I think when first hearing the bald facts, you would be surprised because of the nature of the realisation that it is blatantly against the rules of the game, and that there is ample education. I don't see that anyone, and I see this every year in, year out for a number of years, that anyone can say that we don't have enough education in our game. And the fact that Jaidyn, right up front, from the day that he came to me, admitted that on questioning, I knew that I shouldn't be doing this. So that speaks for at least the acknowledgement of the education.
Did the AFL and their integrity measures know about these bets as part of Jaden coming forward? Did they have any knowledge?
Of the specific bets that Jaden made. When Jaden came forward, he basically disclosed what the bets he'd made, and so they investigated those bets and ensured that there was nothing underlying in terms of impacting on the matches in those bets, and they cleared him of any wrongdoing in that regard. So it was the sanctions purely on the basis that he made the bets on an AFL match and specifically a Collingwood match.
Mark, do you think there was any calculus from Jaden that he thought he would get caught, as opposed to it just being the wrong thing?
No, I don't think so. I think he's a young man that just made a bad decision in the moment, and then as a good young man, he reflected on that and felt guilty about it and came forward, and I think it's as simple as that.
Mark, you self-reported on May 19 and June 19 now. What you say is right, that he was completely open in what he self-reported about. Why do you think it took a full month to get to the bottom of the investigation?
Oh, look, the integrity process is a thorough one, and it needs to be a thorough one. So you'd need to talk to the AFL around the specifics of the investigation and etc. But we're comfortable that they responded as soon as they could. It was a thorough investigation and a fair investigation, and Jaden conducted himself very well in that process. And they were pleased with the way he had responded, and in fact the club had responded. So the process needs to be an extended one to make sure they've covered all bases. So we're comfortable with that.
Geoff, when did Nathan first look at this? How did he respond to it, bearing in mind that he's had a couple of other disappointments with the Goey situation and other matters in the past? He's been through it.
Yeah, Nathan would have been aware of this at some stage, and I don't know the exact date, Jake, but as senior coach, he has the right and the respect of this organisation that he's told in a timely fashion, and that's so he's known for a little while. But I'm not sure that he would join the dots that you've just outlined as as succinctly as that in terms of one mishap following another, because I don't think we see that way in this footy club, and I know Nathan doesn't see that way either.
Geoff, do you know the specifics of the specific margin bet that seems the most troubling? If you wants the team to win by 20 to 30 points or whatever, and it poses the match fixing question in a way. Do you know the specifics of what that is?
Well, yeah, look, we're aware of the specifics, and that was part of the AFL integrity investigation, that they looked at all elements of the bets that he'd laid, and they cleared him of any wrongdoing aside from the fact that clearly he placed the bets.
Well, as he played the last month, if you were expecting a suspension, and obviously it's cutting quite close to finals, had he missed the last 3 or 4 weeks, would that have not counted to his suspension?
Look, the process, as I said, does take a reasonable amount of time, but it takes a reasonable amount of time to ensure guilt or innocence, and so he was innocent of any charge until he was found guilty. So that was appropriate that he played. Clearly, we're now at a point where there has been a finding, and we accept the finding, and so now he stands out of the game.
Mark, just to continue on Jake's point about the nexus with footballing many of your players would have just gambling apps on their phones? Does the club, take the step of actually advising people just don't even download these apps? I mean, is you're sitting there on the couch, it's all like sitting next to a loaded gun with that sort of temptation?
Yeah, look, we do, as part of the gambling education, there's all the good tips of how you should handle yourself and responsible gambling and the risks, and certainly very clear in what the rules are as well. So that's part of the training and education. We've also, we have a partnership with the Responsible Gambling Foundation, and we're in the process, as part of that partnership, forming a policy within the club as to, and this occurred before Jaidyn's situation, forming a policy around what is responsible gambling and ensuring that your behaviours are good. It's not an illegal activity, clearly, but we will counsel our staff and players around what is responsible gambling. It's not an illegal activity. It's a legal activity, but clearly there's good ways of conducting yourself and knowing the limits of that. Go.
So I don't want to trip you on, you've given a really honest answer. Jaden referred to checking the results, perhaps at the end of the game or after conclusion of that result. How can, obviously, people watching tonight will sing at that moment, how can they be satisfied that he didn't have influence on the game? It obviously came out as part of the investigation. What's the critical thing?
Yeah, look, the AFL went through the tapes of the matches that Jaidyn did gamble on, and they reviewed it clearly independently. We weren't part of that process, so I can't answer the specifics, but I know that they looked at all of the footage of the matches and were very comfortable that there was no impact or any potential that Jaidyn impacted negatively on the result. So they've cleared him of that. They've found him guilty because he admitted the guilt around betting on the matches.
Walsh, spot to fill in your forward line. Who comes to mind if possible to play, and how far is Jamie Elliott away, for example?
I'm not sure that's an appropriate question for this time, Jay. But anyway, Jamie Elliott will be a couple of weeks away. He won't be considered this week, and probably not next week. But he's progressing really well at this stage. And you're right. Your first part of your question is right. Jaidyn will be a big hole to fill because he's a wonderful young talent, and whoever gets that opportunity will. I'm sure they'll be eager to fill what are quite young but big shoes.
How tough will it be for him to get back inside after that amount of time out? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, hopefully we make the finals, and we're going okay at the moment. So if we're going well enough, then I would think any player who has missed an extended period, either through injury or, as in Jaidyn's case, the suspension, yeah, he'll find it tough. There's no doubt. As good a young talent as he is, 10 weeks on the sidelines out of the game that is so tough will be a really strong challenge for him to regain a spot in the side. And let's hope it's a challenge that we need to consider, because there's a lot of footy to be played.
One or two final questions?
Yeah, Mark, I appreciate what you're saying before to Tom, that the AFL was satisfied that he didn't do anything with a negative result in the game. But there are clearly moments in the game where Jaden has to make a decision where he kicks it or whether he kicks a goal. How can the AFL 100 or any investigation 100% prove that he would have done that had the bets not been on in the first place?
Yeah, look, I don't want to speak on behalf of AFL Integrity because it was their process of investigation, but they covered all of the elements of that. They were sure that there was no impact in terms of impacting on the results of the match. He's done the wrong thing, he's accepted he's done the wrong thing, and he's being suspended for that, but it is based on him applying bets into the match. Last one? All good? Thanks very much. Appreciate it.